Welcome to the Prosper in Private Practice podcast. I'm Claire Feldman, here to guide you to a thriving private practice without burnout. If you're a counsellor or therapist seeking more aligned clients, flexible hours and financial stability, then join me. As a therapist of 12 years, I've turned my own challenges into success, so let's grow your dream private practice together. Are you ready? Let's dive in. So I'm delighted to have on the podcast today the lovely Sharon Williams of Blue Lights Counselling. Sharon and I's paths crossed around a year or so ago now when she booked a strategy session with myself. Sharon's previously worked in the police force and also as a driving instructor, and she was making the transition into private practice and was looking for some support. I must say it has been so lovely over the last year to watch Sharon's brand evolve, to watch her business grow, and to see that she is flourishing in private practice. And so that's what our conversation really centres around today, is how she has found this transition in moving from paid employment into private practice. I hope you enjoy this episode. Sharon, it is absolutely lovely to have you here.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
You are more than welcome. So tell us a little bit about how long have you been going then in private practice?
Oh, around 9 months now, officially, but there was a lot of work running up to launching the practice that I've been doing for probably a year and a half, more. But yeah, I'm Sharon from Blue Light Counselling, and I fell into counselling after going through counselling myself. I run a practice in Lincoln city centre and online now, and I do counselling for the emergency services because that's the experience I've had. I'm an ex-police officer. I had 12 years in the police, was medically retired, went through counselling myself, and I was absolutely amazed by how this lady managed to unpick everything in my head, and she didn't even know me. And I was kind of aware of like a missing part of the medical retirement process. So that's what inspired me to train as a counsellor initially.
It's amazing. And am I right in thinking that it wasn't just the police that you had done? Because I remember us having a conversation as well about you were a driving instructor for a while.
Yeah, so when I left the police, I became a driving instructor.
Okay.
My role in the police, when I finished, I was working on a covert surveillance unit, and I was an advanced police driver, so doing the blue light stuff, but in plain cars. And I love driving, I always have. So I thought, it'd be nice to do something, with that. And the lady that actually did my driving course while I was in the police runs a driving school in Lincoln, Links Driving Solutions. And she trained me when she heard that I was being medically retired. She trained me to be a driving instructor to teach learners. And that's how my driving school came about. I qualified as an ADI, approved driving instructor. And I did learners whilst I was training of an evening to become a counsellor once a week. So it took a long time.
It's brilliant that you had those transferable skills, though, to be able to go from the police straight into kind of doing the driving instructing.
Yeah, and I think it's a case of, it's not what you know, it's who you know as well. Like networking is so important. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for the people that had come into my life at various times. So yeah, I think that's key in that sense. But then I went on to learn to train instructors, which is a lot safer because they don't try and kill you, which is great. You're to keep yourself alive.
Have nerves of steel, I imagine, to be a driving instructor.
Oh, everybody says I'm really calm and really good with anxious people. And to be fair, when you're sat in the car and you've got a learner next to you, you're both facing the same direction. You're not looking at one another, kind of. And they just spill stuff. They just come out with all of this stuff. And it was like a counselling session on wheels anyway, which was a good sort of indicator that, yeah, this is what I want to do. But I'm not going down that niche. I'm not doing like counselling whilst you're driving kind of thing. So
that could be a whole new niche, couldn't it?
Yeah. So I went with teaching people that want to become driving instructors. It's really difficult, but in a different way, and I really get a lot of sort of sense of achievement and joy. I enjoy that job, whereas teaching learners, I've done it for years and it was just like a bit like complacent with it. It's just another one. I got bored, basically. I wasn't being challenged.
Do you still do that? Showing, oh, you still do that? Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, it's real hit and miss though. It's not a job that you can do as like a full-time job because they're so sporadic, the people that are coming to you, and once they're passed, so they don't need you anymore. but they seem to come like buses. I've got about 5 at the moment, and I'm
Ah,
like, I don't need this. I want to work on my business, but you
that
know,
might be, it might be quite nice, though, I imagine, just as something that's completely then
yeah,
not counselling related, something that's very different as well.
yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah, and it's a different challenge, and I feel there's a lot of transferable skills in that, especially with the listening skills and whatnot. But it is funny because some of my trainee driving instructors get in the car and they just like, oh, can I have a free counselling session? Because they know what I do. It's like, no. But yeah, it is really nice to be able to switch between the two. But
Yeah.
there's a part of me that thinks I really need to be working on my practice. I want to be working on my practice. But
Yeah.
it's business, it's money, it's coming in, it's paying my bills, paying my mortgage. So I'm
Yeah.
just both at the moment.
And I think what you're describing is what most counselors and therapists experience, isn't it? That there's a whole transition phase between maybe having a career that's completely unrelated and then building up your practice. That whole process actually takes time to be in a position where actually my private practice is working for me and I can maybe leave that work behind or reduce that work that. And I think that is something that the reality of that for many people is that that takes time. That could be a year, 2 years, 3 years, however long it is, and that it's not necessarily the quick transition that maybe people think it is, because you obviously there's all that work you're having to do around, growing your audience, working on your website, driving traffic to it, that there's a lot of stuff going on in the background. And you're definitely not alone in that struggle, I think, of trying to find that balance between the need to earn money and actually spend time
Mm.
marketing my business and growing my business. But considering you've only been in your private practice for 9 months, you're going pretty well.
Yeah, I have got a lot of regular clients. I've got enough that I can cope with at the moment.
Yeah.
I've got 6 or 7 at the moment a week, which is plenty.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to have the predicament of, oh gosh, I've got a waiting list, and then sort of in the nicest possible way, getting rid of my trainee instructors and then focusing on the counselling, because that's where my true passion is at. And I think that's so important doing this job. You've really got to want to do it and
Mhm.
help people. But yeah, the balance isn't easy. I find my diary probably is the hardest part of my working day, sorting all my appointments out and whatnot. But yeah, there's a hell of a lot of work behind the scenes. Like I've been doing research for my copy on my website. I didn't even know what they meant by copy, until I was doing my website. And the keyword searches, I spent days and days on that, researching what I wanted to say, who my ideal client was. And as you know, Claire, I had a power hour with you, which
Mhm.
kind of sent me down the road of blue light counselling. Like,
Mhm.
I remember you said to me, like, with your experience, why are you not counselling emergency services? I don't actually know the answer to that. Yeah,
It
well, I
seems so
do that.
obvious to
Yeah,
me.
it does seem obvious. Yeah. And that was my experience when I went through counselling when I left the police. I was medically retired, so I had a spinal fracture and
Mhm.
I had to have a spinal fusion at the age of 35, which the surgeons couldn't believe I was there having that done at that age. And it was a real tricky time physically, emotionally, mentally, because I lost my job,
Mhm.
my whole career. And it was more than a career, it was a lifestyle for me. Well, it is for everybody. And I very quickly realised that I was just a number, just a resource, just another cop. And I had 6 solution focused brief counselling sessions through the EAP provider that they used at the time. And I actually went to see a lady, like I said earlier, in Lincoln, and she was just amazing. But by the time the 6th session came round, I was just beginning to get past all of the rapport building, opening up to her. But I had a lot of stuff to explain to her because
Mhm.
she wouldn't understand like how it affects my role. What does restricted duties mean? What do you mean you're not, public facing and all of this stuff? And procedurally, there's a lot of things that I had to explain to her. And certain things that I didn't want to share as well, because I didn't want her to go, oh my God, that's absolutely dreadful. I wasn't there for pity. So I did hold back quite a lot. But by the time I completed those 6 sessions, I went back to my inspector and asked for more. And I
Mhm.
had to beg to ask for these sessions.
Mhm.
Um, and I said, they're really helping me, but I've only just realised, I need to work with this too. I need to open up to this lady. And I can remember sitting in the office and they're kind of like, oh, well, we'll have to see if we can, authorize that because it costs so much money. And I'm like, guys, I fractured my spine. Like my world is like changing, and you're quibbling about X amount of money that, you probably get it at an EAP rate anyway. So it kind of made me feel really undervalued, worthless. I felt like a problem. And that was really difficult. But I had the other 6 sessions, and there was various things going on at the time. Like my dad had been diagnosed with cancer. There was stuff going on in the family that had caused a lot of friction, a lot of tension, a lot of shock as well. My neighbour at the time, he hated police, so he would often, well, he slashed my car tyres once. I came out to my own private car and he'd slashed my car tyres. And it was years of antisocial behaviour. I reported him to the council. Nothing was done about it. He's drug dealing, from his house. I tell work, they're not interested. And again, I'm like, come on, guys, where's this police family that you always say is there? Like, you don't give a damn about me, do you really? And that's how I felt, really sad. So all of that stress and trauma going on, and I was sleep deprived as well because he was partying till all through the night with his drug using friends. It was dreadful. And I remember leaving there thinking, gosh, she's really unraveled my brain. How has she done that? She doesn't even know who I am, but somehow she's managed to latch on to something, pull it all out, process it with me, and kind of work towards a solution for it. And one of the things that I take away from that is she told me about white noise. She introduced me to white noise, and I still use it now if I struggle with getting to sleep. Amazing.
Please tell me that you don't have that neighbour anymore.
No, thankfully. That's the trouble with the house next door being rented out. You never know who's going to go in there. But after that experience, the landlord is very much on my side. And there's a lovely lady that lives there now. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, very sad to hear that situation, though, that you give 12 years service and then you're having to beg to get additional support. And it really, that is something I think gets echoed an awful lot with people who work in emergency services. I know when I first set up in private practice, I would have got a lot of police coming to see me privately because they didn't want it on record. They didn't feel like they could go to their employer. They felt like it would be used against them. And it's such a shame, given like the impact of the role, that there's not more support, and it's not more actively encouraged against to protect your mental health and your well-being, really.
Yeah. They do talk about it well, but in
reality.
practicality, it's a big no-no because you're there, you are a resource, you are expected to dust yourself off and crack back on with the next job. You could be dealing with like a fatal road traffic accident one minute, and then the next minute you're going to a domestic, and having to switch between those two and just park all your private thoughts and feelings is not normal.
Yeah.
It's not normal at all. And I noticed that the huge gap in this, that I'd gone 12 years through my police career hiding the fact that I had a chronic illness. I had ulcerative, well, I still have ulcerative colitis. And I never told a soul. I used to take my hospital days, I used to take annual leave and not tell anybody because it's a sign of weakness. You don't want to be, oh, she can't go to that because of this. And that's the kind of environment that I was working in. And
you were the job, essentially.
Yeah. I can remember another chap on my shift who had the same illness, and he was just bullied, and that made me fearful of ever saying anything. So I never said anything until it came to me going through this counselling process. And I thought, blimey, that's a massive part of my life. And, it has nearly finished me off. It's nearly killed me at points. But I've just got my uniform on, gone back to work, not said a word. I was in hospital with sepsis. They didn't know what it was because of, but it was because of the medication I was on. I got glandular fever, and it was just left undiagnosed to the point where it developed to sepsis. But work didn't know why. The catalyst to that was the fact that I've got an autoimmune condition. I was immunosuppressed. They had no idea. So I went to work with like a weakened heart muscle, and I remember being on restricted duties then, and at the time we would have police officers looking after prisoners that were in custody, and I was doing that, and even like getting up off my seat and walking to a cell door to check they're okay. I was exhausted because my heart muscle had weakened. And that's how much you give to that job. So when you're struggling and you ask for help and you don't get what you want or what you expect they're going to give you, what they've hyped you up to expect, it's devastating. So
Sure.
that's why Blue Light Counselling was born, really.
Yeah, and that's what just made so much sense when we had a conversation maybe about a year ago or so, like with your lived-in experience that you have, that understanding you have perhaps of why people maybe don't want to go through occupational health or don't want to go internally, that there will be plenty of people who are going through similar experiences to you that would rather come privately and speak to someone who gets it.
Yeah, and that's the main thing. Yeah, that's the main kind of message on my website. Like, I do get it, because an example I've used before is, say I wanted to go for a firearms role, or anybody wanted to apply for a role where you're armed as part of your everyday job. They would look at your health record, they would look at your fitness, they would look at your mental health, and they're never going to allow somebody to carry an armed weapon in public that's had mental health problems, PTSD, depression, anxiety. So it's affecting people's careers, because those people can do that despite having PTSD, depression, anxiety. It is still possible to be a capable police officer, but it's that risk that they're not willing to take. If we allowed them to do that job and they fired a gun and it all went wrong, we're held accountable. Well, you could see that they had PTSD, depression, etc. on their health record, and you still gave them a gun. So it's all about this blame culture. And when I was being medically retired, I didn't want to go. I said, just give me any other job, I will do it. And they said, no, basically. I said, I'm willing to go out there and do what I was doing originally on the surveillance team. If there's any issues with my back, I'll be fully responsible for that. And I'm happy to sign a disclaimer to say that I won't sue you. And they were still refused. They still said no.
And how are you feeling now in the position where you are doing what you're doing?
Absolute blessing in disguise. I tell you, it's like I've got my life back.
Yeah.
And that is something that you're really short-sighted of in the role like that.
I bet you can't even imagine the fact that if you'd have been sitting there maybe like 5, 10 years ago thinking about what the you of now would be doing, you probably wouldn't have imagined it for yourself.
Yeah, I was having this conversation actually recently with somebody, and I said I was due to retire at 65 from the police. I can't imagine doing that job in the police till 65. And that's without all my back problems and whatnot. But yeah, massive, massive shift. It's a blessing in disguise. I look back on it now and think I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for that experience. I mean, ideally, I'd love to still be in the police and having that career, but I got to where I wanted to be. I achieved what I wanted to achieve. But this gives me an opportunity now to go off on another path that I'm passionate about, not kind of forced into doing. I mean, don't get me wrong when I say forced. I signed up for being a police officer, but you are, well, you understand that you have to uphold a service to the public, and you have to follow orders and the expectations that are made of you. If you don't, then you're going to get fired. So it was a massive weight lifted in terms of, oh my God, I can do what I want. I can look in at starting a business without the police going, what are you doing? That's not allowed.
Yeah.
And controlling my life.
Yeah, it's absolute beauty of what you're doing now. You're actually getting to do it on your terms and to work with the kind of clients that you want to work with. And I know when we had the conversation and the name Blue Lights Counselling, I remember we kind of had a chat about Blue Lights Counselling and actually what a brilliant name that would be, because emergency service workers, they will search for blue light discounts or something. I remember you saying, so they'll be putting
Yeah.
in kind of blue light automatically. So it could be a great wee way of driving kind of more traffic to your website.
Yeah, it's all emergency services can sign up to a blue light card, which is a discount service, as you mentioned. And thought, yeah, actually, it makes sense, because if they're typing that in, then I'm going to pop up potentially. And when I set up my LinkedIn profile, I noticed that they had been viewing my profile, and I thought, oh my God, are they going to sue me? But my branding, my mandala branding, it's bespoke. It's not copying them. It's actually made up of the force crest, if you like, the badge that you see on people's police helmets and stuff. It's made up of that, and it was bespoke designed by Sammy from Collab Creative that you introduced me to as well. So again, it's the people that you come in
Yeah,
contact with that make things.
absolutely. I remember seeing your website after Sammy had designed it for the first time and just thinking, wow, that is beautiful. It's a stunning website, but also speaks directly to your ideal client. But in particular, it's the logo. I was raving about your logo. I thought it was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. That's lovely to hear. Yeah, I've had some really great feedback with it. And yeah, the logo makes me chuckle because Sammy really gets to know the people she works with, and
Mhm.
she injects your personal touch and personality in there as well. And my big kind of hobby to switch off is art. It's drawing mandalas. It is geometric art as well. I do a lot of that, Islamic geometry and stuff like that. So she actually started drawing mandalas as a result of me saying, can I have a mandala for my logo? And now she kind of gets what that does for me. It puts you in that chilled, meditative state.
Mhm.
Um, and I've got time to do that because I'm self-employed. I haven't got to think, oh, I've got to be here at such and such. Or obviously other when I have appointments. But yeah, it really shows my personality. It's a brand now with the Blue Light Counselling underneath. And yeah, it's recognizable, I think, as well. Yeah, and a message that I took away from Sammy, in the nicest way, your website isn't about you. It's about how it looks and is perceived by others. And you've got to write it without that personal opinion.
Mhm.
Almost. I didn't like outsource my copy. I wrote it in conjunction with Sammy, and I wrote it from a real honest place, a deep place. I've never shared that information that's on my website before, never. And now it's out there for the whole world to see. And I think that's important, showing that vulnerability as well on your website, and on your social media. Because if you're not willing to be open and honest, then why are your clients going to do that?
It's something we talk about in the hub a lot, really, isn't it? That
Yeah,
we're so used to not disclosing. We're trained around being kind of blank canvases, that you don't share any personal information, that it's not about you. But actually, the sharing that some of your personal story it is about your client, because it's about resonating and connecting with your ideal client. And I think particularly for you, because you've got such a clearly defined niche, that's actually so important.
yeah, 100%. And I remember going through training and they're like, no, you're not allowed to make them a cup of tea or coffee. They have a glass of water and that's it. And I'm like, no. Where my office is, there's a beautiful cafe on the ground floor, proper Italian food and coffee. So the first thing I do is get us a coffee from there, take it upstairs, and it just really sets the tone. Because when you're frontline emergency services, or even not on the front line, you're very rarely do you have time to sit down and have a hot cup of tea or
Mm.
coffee because you're always doing something. So that hot brew signifies to them, oh my God, I can actually sit here and drink this and not have to be off anywhere. And I can actually give myself permission to talk to Sharon because she's given me a coffee. Like that's what we do.
Mhm.
And it keeps it informal. And I think it's helpful for rapport building. That's my personal experience of it. But
And I think that's the thing, that everybody will have their own
yeah,
personal experience, and I think that's what you really learn, particularly like you did EAP as well, didn't you, for a
yeah,
while?
yeah.
That when you're used to, maybe you're coming out of training, you're going into maybe EAP organizations, or you're working for different services. All these places will have, they will have their rules, their boundaries, their policies, everything to follow. Private practice is a totally different ball game in that it's yours.
Yeah.
It's your business. And I think that's the beauty of it, that you get to decide actually what we're all going to be ethical at the end of the day. We're not going to be doing things outrageous, but you get to decide, actually, I'm going to have a coffee machine there, or we're going to, what the layout of your office is going to be like, what the environment you're going to create is going to be like, what feels right for you. And I think that's just something that comes with time, isn't it? That you get more confident in knowing, well, what am I about and what feels right for me?
Yeah, and also quite a lot of feedback helps. I mean, I don't go out saying, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? But when people walk in my room, whether they're counselling clients or whether they're instructors that I'm working with, or just friends and family that have come for a nosy, they go, oh my God, I love your room. It just feels so calm and comfortable and cozy. And that's what I was kind of going for with that. So yeah, the feedback really helps. And that's what I love about the hub as well, the PIP hub. where we can look at each other's websites and rooms and feedback to each other. It's a really good resource for that. It can be a lonely job as well, Claire, can't it? When you're self-employed and it's just you, and you've just had supervision, so you don't really want to bother your supervisor again. But having that resource there has been a massive help for me.
Yeah, I think that, even in some of the larger Facebook communities, I've certainly seen this. I don't know if you're in any of these communities, but I cringe sometimes because someone will ask a question and it's a perfectly normal question to ask, and there'll be abuse or people getting overly opinionated and people being judgmental. And I think it's no wonder now so many people in those groups post anonymously because they're scared of being attacked. So I love within our little community, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And everybody genuinely wants to support each other. And I think that is so important. Like you're right, we're isolated in this field. And if you don't have people you can turn to, it can make it like a really difficult experience, I think. And it doesn't need to be.
No, that's it. Just yesterday, actually, I was on something like that on Facebook, and there was an anonymous post, and she'd only been in private practice about 5 months, had a couple of clients, but was like, why aren't I thriving? And what's everybody else's experience? And straight away, opinion after opinion after opinion. You're doing it right, you're not doing it right. And I went on there and said, like, everybody's got their own experience, and you can have yours. And I actually linked the enriched practice on there as well. Because they're anonymous. I mean, how sad is that you have to post anonymously because of the backlash that you might get? I mean,
Yeah, I know. And I think that's it. Everybody has their opinions, everybody has their judgments, but it's so right what you're saying, that you have to find, obviously you want guidance, you want support, but you also have to find your own way of doing things. And it's a bit like those questions where people will ask advice about marketing. You're right, everybody will throw different things in, but you've also got to find a way of working that works for you. And that's something, again, we kind of talk about in the community an awful lot, is that for some people are going to despise Instagram and reels and things like that, but they might excel in something like blog writing or, doing something different. So it's about finding a way of marketing yourself that feels comfortable for you. And I think your website sort of does a lot of your marketing for you, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you might have noticed in the recent masterclass that Sammy did, she had an example of one of my photos and I think the logo on my website. And I'd done a quote for her because all my clients come through either word of mouth because, oh, have you seen what Sharon's doing now? It's people I used to work with, or they come through Google, my website coming up when they search for it, which is amazing. I've not paid for anything, I've not pushed anything, I've not done any massive advertising campaigns. And that for me at the moment is just where I want to be until I get rid of my trainee instructors in the nice, I hate saying that, but
get rid of them.
Get rid of them. I want them to pass and have a thriving business themselves. But yeah, the website is so important, and it was such an outlay at the time for me because I was working EAP and it doesn't pay that great, but it was covering my bills, etc. And to spend that and see the results from my investment is just amazing, because I wouldn't be where I am now if it wasn't for Sammy. I wouldn't be where I am now if it wasn't for having that hour with you. And I think people are a bit frightened, like that anonymous poster. She's probably really confused. I say she, I'm assuming, probably really confused now with all of those stories there and all of those opinions. Do this, do that. She needs to go on a bit of self-discovery like I did, because there's probably something really obvious that she's not doing and can't see it because you go blind with your own.
Yeah, you go round in circles, and I think the word you just used there, investment, that for me anyway, I know obviously that when we come out of training, we've spent so much money on doing our training that we don't have heaps of money, lying spare to invest in things like mentoring or invest in things like getting a website built. But I think there is something so powerful in actually investing and getting some support in an area that you might be blindsided with. And I see such a difference in people like yourself and other people within the community that are investing in that help, that it just seems like they can jump maybe a little bit further, a little bit quicker, because they get really clear on, who their ideal client is, what kind of marketing is going to be aligned with them, what their process is going to look like. And I think that is something I wish maybe more counselors and therapists really kind of took the time to think about, rather than trying to do everything themselves.
And my honest view on that, it should be brought into the training process.
Oh yeah.
When people qualify, they're under the impression they're going to skip out of college and woohoo, I'm going to be a counsellor. You're not. I had to do 13 months with an EAP, because I couldn't just go into counselling like that.
And
But
that should be more transparent, really, shouldn't it? Like with everybody coming through. Number one, there should definitely be more training around marketing and around the business side of it. But there should also be more, I think, transparency around what is available to you
yeah,
when you
yeah.
actually qualify.
Yeah, before I started with the EAP, I actually applied for a job with the NHS in Lincolnshire.
Mhm.
Um, and I was determined I was going to get that job. And I, for some reason, I'm a real geek with interviews. I just like I do interview coaching as a side. I don't advertise the fact that I do it, but I do it. I've got a client actually at the moment who's got a job interview in the police, and he's coming to me again the day before his interview to run through his responses to things, which is another helpful thing, isn't it? God, I'm digressing again. I went for an interview with the NHS, and it was during lockdown time, so it was all over Zoom. And they rang me when I was on my placement. I'd done, I think, 82 hours of my 100 hours at this point. And they said, your interview was brilliant. We really, really thought you were awesome. Scored really high in the interview. Actually came top of the interview. And I was like, yes, they're going to offer me a job. And then they said, but you haven't got enough hours. We want you to do 200 hours minimum before you come and work for us. And I said, well, I'm on 82. I can go and do the rest like in about 6 weeks. Just let me, give me time. No, they weren't interested. That job had already been gone to somebody else. I'm pretty sure, kind of an internal.
Put you through that in the first place, though.
Yeah. Why did they do that? Yeah, I put myself through absolute hell. I really that was my sole focus. I'm going to get this job. But do you know what? I'm so pleased I didn't. It was working locally with clients for depression. So they would have 6 to 10 sessions. They would come and see me every week for depression. And then if they're not done by the end of the sessions, tough. You go back round the whole system again. I can't imagine myself counselling for depression full time, Monday to Friday. No.
Yeah.
And I think the only way to go is private practice, from if you want the autonomy of doing it and the freedom to work it around your life as well. And a lot of people say like it's really difficult. I don't know about running a business. You already run a business, so you're all right. Well, I don't run one like this.
It's totally different, isn't it?
Yeah.
Completely different. I bet you notice, I know I definitely notice this, the difference between when you're working with clients through something like an EAP. I worked in like EAPs and GP surgeries and things. People accessing through those services versus your own private clients. Do you notice a real difference in terms of even how you feel?
Yeah, I worked with an EAP that standard was solution focused brief therapy. When I joined them, I thought that I was joining as an affiliate, and then very quickly realized, oh, you're on a helpline, 8-hour shifts. And I only did 3 days a week, but blimey, did that exhaust me mentally, gosh, because you had targets to hit. It was 20 minutes a call average, 3 calls an hour. You literally had time to go for a loo break. That was it. Half an hour lunch, 8 hours a day. And when you learn about counselling, the very first thing they teach you is you do not give advice. You show people the tools within them to get to their own solutions to their problem. But all I was doing on this EAP helpline was giving advice. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? And it really just didn't, it conflicted with all my
Destroying.
yeah. And yeah, it wasn't a pleasant experience, but it did what it needed to do. And I've got a year's experience working with solution focused brief therapy, which I never would have had if I didn't do that. But yeah, thankfully that this is where I use that time to work on my own practice, to do all the background work in my spare time, to then be able to say, right, we're going to launch in whatever month it was in the summer, August, I think, and I'm leaving. And they didn't want me to go. And like, why are you going?
I'm sure they didn't.
Yeah, I'm going to pursue my own practice. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm out of here.
You were delighted that day, weren't you, when you were leaving?
Yeah, it was New Year's Day was my last shift,
Yeah.
because I thought, God, they're offering all of this money to work sort of Boxing Day, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to have some of that. And then, yeah, when I left, it was just like, oh gosh, I'm never going to be employed again. That's the decision that I made at that point. Never
Yeah.
going to do it again,
Uh-huh.
because that's not counselling in my mind. Morally, it didn't sit right with me. That's not what I trained to do.
Yeah, no looking back for you. Please ignore my dog is going mad, scratching the chair in the background. If you can hear
I can see
the
it still.
scratching, she's having one of her wee fits. We'll just ignore her. Pretend that's not happening in the background.
I've locked my cat in the kitchen because he's just like historically photobombs videos or video.
That would have been
Terrible
a
stuff.
wise thing for me to do. You really have, it's that you're moving forward and you're building your practice and you're building your business, aren't you, in your terms, which is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think just a little bit every day makes a massive difference. But I would like more time to spend on social media campaigns and stuff. But I'm doing that for my other role as well. And I also got a job as a college tutor. I started in January, so I've officially got 3 jobs at the moment.
Never a dull moment, Sharon.
Which is crazy, really, isn't it? But I do find that it's online training, so it's like working from home. So the college that I work with, I'm doing 2 level 2 courses at the minute, and then keeping them for level 3, level 4. And I created a level 2 course on understanding substance misuse. It was through the CPCAB. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
heard of them. And they were really tough that as an ex-cop, I was the tutor for this course with my experience, and I could share something really unique with all of the students on that. So that starts in April, which I'm really looking forward to. But yeah, it's like, oh, I just about get some more time back in my diary, and then I go and take on another job.
Glutton for punishment.
Yeah, but I do like learning. If I'm not challenged or learning, then I get bored very
And it's
easily.
something different, isn't it? There's something really different about when you're learning or challenging yourself, but it's for something that you really want. I was having a conversation with someone the other day about I'm not an academic person at all. I hated school. I struggled through all my qualifications, struggled through my degree. And then when I started retraining in counselling, it was a totally different experience kind of later in life, because I was so passionate and genuinely interested in it. And I think that's what's different about when you're doing something that you're really passionate about.
Yeah, and that's a typical trait of ADHD. I've been referred for assessment for ADHD because I'm convinced like it resonates with me so much. And I did a level 2 qualification on understanding autism and ADHD, and that opened up my eyes to so much. It was free, during the kind of lockdown period and whatnot. But yeah, people say, how do you do it? How do you succeed in what you do? Because I give my all to stuff that I'm passionate about, and everything else can wait.
Everything else goes to pot.
That's it. Everything else can just park. I'm dealing with this right now. Like, for instance, I would much rather do some Islamic geometry rather than do the housework any day of the week.
I'm with you.
And as a result, my house is nothing like my office. My office is just clean, tidy, cozy. My house is not, completely the opposite. That's why I've got my background blurred, because we're in the art room at the minute, and it's just stuff everywhere. But yeah, it's things happen, don't they? And when you need to be in a comfortable position really to cover the inevitable. Like, what if something happened next week? Am I able to leave my practice as it is? For example, my spinal fusion, I found out a couple of weeks ago, has actually failed. And I'm now back on, cocodamol and tramadol. And I've got a CT scan next week to see actually what is going on, and to have another spinal injection until they decide what's going to happen with it. Now, this is like 9 years on from when I had my surgery. I got 7 good years. And then the last 2 years, I've been in such pain, going backwards and forwards to the GPs. And finally, I get back to the hospital where I had it done. I went to a private hospital, but on their NHS list. And I get back to them and they say, no, your fusion's failed. The GP has like passed me off with some tablets saying, oh, you've probably got a nerve impingement, put me on all this medication. And as a result of that, I'm like, God, I'm going to have surgery again. What's going to happen to my practice? So I'm working on, getting it to a point where I don't have to do too much behind the scenes. And when that time does come, when I'm out the game and recovering, I can still see my clients, over Zoom and whatnot. I wouldn't be able to do that if, I was doing the EAP because it's too long, 8 hours.
Gosh, yeah, that's so true. And I haven't read the article, but people keep referencing it. But there was an article in Therapy Today, I think recently, about portfolio working. And it was kind of essentially what you're describing is having some different sources of revenue and different sources of income, so that when situations potentially like this come up, that you do have actually money still coming in from somewhere. And that maybe you have the ability, when one aspect of your income is quiet, that maybe you can increase in another area as well.
I'm actually looking at generating some passive income options on my website. So, for example, when I've done my hypnotherapy course, I'm going to do some recordings on there that people could download, maybe look at doing an ebook with a free, download for them. Loads of things I'm thinking of. But the one thing I wanted to do, I'm actually doing another project. I'm doing some teacher training with this wonderful lady in Australia who teaches the spiritual sacred geometry. And I'm going to do some teacher training with her so I can do courses on my website. And if people are into that, it's a take it or leave it thing, because some cops are, some cops aren't. But I found it really helped me. So if it helped me, it might help somebody else out
Absolutely.
there.
That's a really nice thing. I don't know if I've said that to you or not, but I have on my private practice website hypnotherapy
Mm.
audios that people can purchase and download and stuff as well. And that's really nice. There is nothing lovelier than getting like a little PayPal notification
Yeah.
through of something, and it's small amounts. I think my audios are about 17 each. I've got like an online course and stuff on there. There is nothing nicer than PayPal notifications coming through and you're sitting, randomly on a Friday night watching TV. It's lovely that it's not necessarily huge amounts of money, but really nice to have those little extra sources of income coming in. So that's definitely something that would work really, really well on your website.
Yeah, and it's the only choice I can see. It makes sense, business sense, to do that going forward, because at the moment, with all of my roles, I have to deliver myself to these people to meet their expectations, and they pay me for being there with them, albeit virtually or physically. But I won't be able to do that if I'm recovering from more spinal surgery for X amount of months. So yeah, that's where my head is at the moment, trying to get all that sorted before the inevitable happens, which
Yeah.
is just a little sort of kick in the backside. But hey,
It's good to be kind of thinking ahead about that, that you're kind of putting a plan in place
mm,
for that, which is brilliant. Is there anything, thinking about other counselors and therapists that maybe listening to this podcast episode, that are maybe relatively new
yeah.
to private practice, given like the experience you've had over, say, the last year and even like the 13 months before, any kind of key insights or key kind of tips that you would share to them around getting established in private practice?
Yes, there's a couple. I would say you need to get over the, oh, but that's really expensive, £1,000 odd for a website. That's really expensive. But it does so much for me in my practice. It is where I get most of my clients from that aren't word of mouth. You've got to speculate to accumulate. I always say that, it's short-term pain for a long-term gain. And sourcing support and advice from people that mentor like yourself is invaluable, because you can ask on all these forums on social media, you're going to get people's personal opinions. You're not going to get support that actually makes you realize, oh yeah, I can actually do that. Somebody to look at what your skills are, a bit like you did with me, like, why aren't you counseling police officers? Because I wasn't even thinking about that when I spoke to you. I'd done my 100 hours in a trauma centre and I just wanted to work with trauma as
Oh,
my
yeah, I
niche.
remember that. Yeah.
But what's trauma? Like, it's a massive thing, isn't it? Massive umbrella term. And when you said it, I was like, God, that's so obvious. Why couldn't I have thought of that? What a brilliant £100 to spend. So yeah, invest. You've got to invest, because if you don't, you will be like that anonymous person potentially on that forum that I mentioned earlier, trying what they think they should be doing, whereas actually that extra fresh set of eyes can tell you what is going to work for you. That is really going to work for you if you go for that.
Mm-hmm.
100%. So yeah, getting the support from professionals, people that are not there to share their opinion, they're there to pull out or recognize what is good about you as an individual, and don't be afraid to spend the money because you will get it back easily.
Yeah. Sorry, that's the great advice. My dog, 1 second. That's my learning for next podcast recording, is make sure there are no animals present.
Oh, well, it's quite cute to see, but nobody can see it if they're listening to this, can they? So, but it is cute. Yeah.
Thank you. But that's brilliant advice. And I think, we have these conversations all the time, don't we, about how tricky we can be around money. Particularly in our profession, we can be very, very uncomfortable around money. But it always kind of staggers me how we will put thousands into our courses, our counselling courses, and into our CPD. And we are the worst group of people ever for thinking we need more CPD and more CPD, and I'm guilty of it, you're guilty of it too, Sharon, that we're all guilty of more CPD, and often it's not more CPD that we need to invest in getting some mentoring support, get some work on mindset, get confidence around being visible, around defining who our ideal client is, building a good quality website. That actually would be much better to invest the money in things like that.
Yeah, a good example actually to share of that. I have trained in a technique called brain working recursive therapy. It's abbreviated to BWRT, and I've been doing that extra 1 page on my website for weeks. Sammy said, "Let me know when you've done it. I'll have a look over it." And she sent me some pointers after the masterclass last week. Have I been able to get round to do it? No. I spent over £1,000 on that course, and it's just sat in my non-published area of my website. So if you haven't got the means or the resources to advertise it, what's the point in spending that £1,000?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I need to get that active, which is my job for the rest of this week. That's my goal.
So true. Thank you so much for speaking to me, Sharon.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
So lovely to talk to you today. And I think that everybody listening are going to get some great insights and great information out of our conversation. And I hopefully will have you on again here soon.
Excellent. Thank you. And good luck to everybody as well with building their practice.
So that's it for today's episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy the episode, I would really appreciate it if you would share it with some of your peers who you think might benefit from it. And if you fancy joining Sharon along with a wonderful bunch of other counsellors and therapists inside my membership community, do visit my website www.theenrichpractice.com to find out more. I'll see you again soon.